ERP software as we know it is dead. That's the breaking news we have for you this morning. But in all seriousness, maybe ERP software is not dead. But the thing we want to talk about here today is the fact that there are plenty of viable options in addition to ERP systems. ERP software is not the end all be all it once was. And so what we wanted to do today in today's live discussion is talk about what some of those alternatives are to the traditional monolithic ERP systems, what are those new emerging technologies that are becoming available, what are the options you have to get more immediate value out of AI and other types of emerging tech without necessarily having to rip out and replace your back office system. So that's the topic for today. And let's jump into the discussion. To unpack this discussion, is ERP software dead and what are the alternatives to ERP systems? Greg Benton is our Chief Strategy Officer here at Third Stage Consulting. Greg, thanks for joining again.
Good to see you this morning, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you. And this is a really fun discussion because it's always fun to challenge the status quo and think outside the box and think about, what are we potentially missing? What are those blind spots or options we have in our digital strategies and ways we move forward? But before we dive into jumping into understanding whether or not ERP software is dead and having a healthy conversation, healthy debate about that, maybe with the audience as well, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Third Stage.
Well, I'm, as the Chief Strategy Officer, leveraging about 25 years implementing, developing strategies and blueprints around primarily ERP, but also all of the edge solutions that surround core ERP, right? So the e-commerce systems, CRM, warehouse management systems, workforce management systems, and all of that time, we've really run into a number of things that cause us to pause at certain points in the course of deploying software systems, and usually that's brought about by technology changes. And we've seen the technology changes coming with hyperscalers being involved with cloud deployments at the major ERP vendors level. And now more recently, we've seen AI come into the picture and really facilitate a lot more interaction, a lot more orchestration of different applications and systems. So there are becoming more and more alternatives to massive universal ERP if you're trying to get to a universal and interoperating data set across your entire enterprise. So we'll be talking about that today. I think this is a great topic.
Yeah, it is. And apparently we've already struck a nerve or struck a chord with the audience here. Oops, I want to get to some of these audience questions here. So one question is from Jonathan, or one comment from Jonathan on YouTube. AI software is most likely going to evolve into ERP or at the least CRM systems, which will be focused on business data. Palantir is a great example of this. Andy on LinkedIn is already chiming in as well. It will always be alive because AI and or machine learning cannot learn without the data ERP provides. I suppose the big question there that we can get into here in a second is, do you need ERP or do you need a new ERP? I guess would be more the question. Do you need a new modern ERP system to provide the data that's needed for AI and machine learning? I think that's the $1 million question for a lot of organizations, especially those that are being sort of forced into the cloud migration path from, SAP, Microsoft, and some of the other big ERP vendors. And that's another thing we want to talk about is give the audience here options and alternatives. So you may have SAP or Microsoft, just as two examples, telling you need to get off the legacy system because we're going to cut off support. But the question becomes, do you really, though? Could you live with a legacy system that isn't maintained if you're just using it as more of a system of record? And then you layer on top, and at least in the interim, maybe some sort of technology that can take advantage of the data you have without the big, massive implementations there. So that's what we'll get into. Here's something we can get into in a moment. This is from Mito on YouTube. Bit confused as to how ERP system fades away and what sort of business application will be replaced. And Mito is watching from the Kingdom of Bahrain. So thank you for being here today. Mito also wants to know, is Oracle Fusion no more valid? Dan says, I think evolving is a better characterization. We all need to process orders and manage manufacturing or a business,
Evolving is right. Yep.
How we process all those data is changing. So great point from Dan on LinkedIn, who is joining us from Chicago. Mech, we know him as well. He's from the Third Stage team, joining from Almost Heaven, West Virginia. So thanks for all the comments so far. Curious to hear from the rest of the audience. Is ERP software dead? Where do you think it's headed? But I guess just to start, just to get us started on this conversation, Greg, um, why do you think, why is this even a discussion point? I'm not the first person. We're not the first people to come out and say ERP is dead or, death to ERP, that sort of thing. I mean, that's been going on for years now, but is this all hype? Is this clickbait, or is there real substance to this idea that ERP software as we know it may be dying?
I think it's a little bit of each of those. It's a little bit of hype. It's a little bit of posturing on the part of the systems integrators, frankly, in terms of ERP is not dead. Look, it's a very symbiotic relationship between the interoperability platforms that are available now. I think Jonathan mentioned Palantir, Snowflake, Databricks, some of the others that come to mind, but they cannot replace those core enterprise operations. So finance, supply chain, on and on and on. So is ERP dead? Probably not. It becomes the kind of the living host for that symbiotic data layer that can be placed on top of or as a foundation to a new ERP system. So you think about ERP evolving, as someone said in the chat a little bit earlier, it's evolving into digital enterprise operations, which is really the whole gamut of the core ERP or back office functions, as well as everything that goes on top of that or connects to that. CRM being a big component there, HCM, warehouse management, PLM. I mean, just, an alphabet soup of a spaghetti mix of interactions and interoperability. The new systems that I mentioned actually create a great flexibility in the architecture that can join those disparate sources of information, including reaching out to the Internet of Things, right? IoT, and bringing all of that in so that you can make insightful decisions and really real-time decisions about what's going on with your business. That also allows you to build this foundation, this data foundation, that then you can build on top of that with the properly sequenced new application sets and new processes that you're going to bring to bear as your future operating state comes to fruition. And that involves a lot of upfront planning, what we call phase zero, in preparation for the organization to move forward as a whole. And all of those things are contributing to the death of ERP. It's really the evolution of the new digital enterprise operations.
Yeah, and I know back, when you and I were in the industry maybe 20 years ago, it used to be sort of a faux pas, almost a bad word to talk about middleware integration, customization. Anytime you would talk about any of those things, it was sort of, for the last 10 to 20 years, it's been almost a faux pas to even think about that. But I think now things have changed. The technology has changed, and now it's more viable to, especially with some of these low code, no code options that you have out there. Like when you think of, like Rapid, for example, or even Odoo, even though Odoo's technically an ERP system, it's sort of that low code, no code open source.
Right.
And then you've got like the Salesforce platform, which a lot of people think of Salesforce as just a CRM system, but it's a whole platform that third-party developers can create other apps on. So you've got all these different options that are sort of hybrids. They're not full on custom dev. They're not full on customizing out of the box software, but it's these more flexible options that can fill in some of the nooks and crannies, or in some cases even replace the need for a full-blown ERP replacement, especially if you just implemented a new ERP system, say 10 years ago. You may not be on the latest and greatest, most modern ERP system, but if it's good enough, if it's modern enough to where you can put cool new technologies on top of that, and get more immediate value without the cost and the risk, I think that's what we're talking about here, is what are those options? There's certainly trade-offs and risks and costs that you have that going down that path, but I think as part of your digital strategy and road mapping, just to be able to consider those options. How do you see customers reacting to this concept that you're talking about, these different alternatives?
Well, We're seeing more and more the idea that there are, for instance, um, uh, in the composable ERP or best of breed assessment, many organizations, they're looking at how can I develop something that's going to focus and provide the use cases necessary to run my business in the way that a custom developed application that's running on an AS400 for the last 20 years does. And the way that you can do that is now with a more flexible architecture that's available along with AI in these interoperability systems that you can be putting in place. And so that takes the place of, or at least enables that configuration that's going to match your business needs much more readily than anything that you can change in, the out of the box software that comes with a multi-tenant environment in the current applications from all of the major ERP vendors. So I think it provides so much more flexibility, so much more focus on your business, that it's really managing through how are we going to get to a true transformation for our business rather than really just a lift and shift of technology. So is
Yeah.
that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think companies are starting to think more about, you know, do we need to replace our ERP system just because we need to get to the cloud or because there's
Yeah,
more modern technology out there? Or is it because there's some sort of business value that we're going to get out of it? And it sounds basic enough. It sounds like a no brainer, but a lot of companies don't have that clarity of what it is they want to accomplish. And they feel like they have to move this direction that the ERP vendors want them to go. And what we're trying to show is, there's different pivots or different, off ramps that you could take and on ramps you could
absolutely.
take to manage that. Here's an interesting comment from Andy on LinkedIn. Andy says the other interesting thought is how will you pass your annual accounting audit? Hard to validate. Sounds like Andy's joining from Austin, Texas, I assume. So that's an interesting point. I mean, obviously, you need to make sure your data, your controls are in place. And if you need a new ERP system
Absolutely.
because you don't have that, then sure, you may need to replace your back office ERP system. But again, assuming you implemented something, say 10 or 15 years ago, and you've got the controls in place, the data is fine, then the question becomes where's the real value going to be? Is it going to be in upgrading to the latest and greatest ERP, or could it be that there's other options out there, or is it a combination of all the above?
And
Tom
if you
on
are if you are going to make that evaluation, shouldn't you be looking at what are the alternatives? So instead of just going to the ERP vendor that you've been working with all the way along and looking at moving to their latest and greatest, should you be looking at other alternatives? Very often it's going to point to staying with especially your partnered provider that's been around for a long time, that is going to limit change, is going to limit some of the risk involved in moving to a new system. But you should take a look at the new tools that are out there and available for you, especially getting to some rapid time to value. Stakeholders within organizations are looking for more unified data, more um, insightful and real-time data that they can pull from disparate systems within their organization that have kind of evolved over time, right? And the new tools that are available to you uh, facilitate that, and you can be in a kind of uniform data model within 60 to 90 days rather than a year or two for a full ERP replacement.
right, yeah, that kind of leads to you're starting to answer another question I had for you, which is
Sorry.
from no, that's right. It's a perfect segue. From your perspective, what are the biggest forces that are or could be driving companies away from traditional monolithic ERP systems? You just talked about, speed to value being one, but are there other trends that you're seeing that are causing clients, and we've got a couple that you and I have talked about where they've sort of put off their ERP initiative
Yeah.
and accelerated, move forward other enterprise technology initiatives. But what's driving this? What are some of the other things that are driving that trend?
Well, organizational risk and also the capital T in transformation really assumes that you're going to change some of those in many cases, 20, 30-year-old processes that are outdated, that are manual, that are highly risky for the organization. And this will allow you to really just back up a little bit. We get called in many times to restart or re-engineer uh, a quote failed ERP implementation. And in so doing, you have to back up and perform really a phase zero, getting the organization ready for that move, and then reducing risk in the move also, making it so that everyone's on board with the changes that are coming, that are going to be a benefit to them, that are going to be a benefit to the organization from a financial standpoint, and modify some of those old processes so that you're now optimized in the way that your software systems actually control the processes. They actually put a security barrier around the way that those processes work in your organization. And that really is what's driving this look at how can we get started with the interoperability hub, or kind of the mission control as the foundation, and then build on top of that with a composable ERP. So the enterprise systems surround that core. And that's really what people are looking for right now. Reducing risk, reducing cost, and producing some immediate time to value in the reporting and the BI that's available to you within months, instead of at the end of the entire process, right?
Right.
So
Right. Yeah, makes total sense, and I agree with you. Those are some important drivers that are causing some people to rethink their strategies. Not everyone is going to fit into any one path, but it's again important to know what your options are.